Were loud. A politician had his hand in the crowd. He took what wasn't his, he lied without shame. But now the tables are turned, justice is claimed. The streets were alive with a joy so rare. As the news spread, hearts filled with care. No more stolen funds, no more lies told. The people cheered, the corruptor was old. No more shadows, no more deceitful light. The people's voice, it echoed clear. Justice served and the town is free. Justice served, the scales were right. No more stolen goods, no more lies. The town was saved, the people fight. For justice served and they all unite. Justice served, the corruptors fall. The people's hearts now they call. No more fear, no more small talk. Justice served, the counts will clap.
Hi, Everett friends. Good to reach out and chat with you again. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch the first stream that dropped last night. It was ready for people to view this morning when they woke up. I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Councilwoman Gurleen Alsey-Javelin, whom I am exceptionally grateful to her for coming on the show and for taking time to share her views with me. She is an incredible person, and but for the people of Everett, I hope she's involved in the scene there for a long, long time. She definitely has a heart in the right place. So tonight, I'm recording here on what is today's date? It is April 29th. I am recording this stream, and I'm actually very excited about the guest that's coming on. This is a person whom I have admired for a long, long time. I got to know him back more than 25 years ago. And, although our interactions, usually surrounded the local political scene or perhaps something to do professionally, didn't maintain like a social relationship or anything like that. But I did learn quite a bit about the man. I do respect him, and I think he is salt of the earth. I just, I can't say enough great things about Councilman Robert Van Campen. So he will be coming in to talk with us shortly, and hopefully we'll learn a few new things along the way, but definitely get some insight as to what might be on the horizon. Now, of course, the $1 million question that everybody wants to know is, Robert Van Campen going to run for mayor? Well, we're certainly going to ask him that question. I can tell you that much. I've had a little bit of colloquy with him offline, and so I don't want to give you any spoilers here at this point in time, but he's going to be yes, because it's the pink elephant in the room, and this is what everybody really wants to know. So we're going to address that question and then talk about a few things that have happened more recently within City Council. Obviously, the longevity overpayment debate is what I'll call it right now. It's really nothing to debate about, but neither here nor there. So I'm anxious to get going and talk to Rob and see if we can get a little insight as to what the future of Everett might look like, either with or without Mayor Robert Van Campen. All right, turning it over. Open the door, and here he is. Hello, Robert.
The city council at the time.
There
So let me say, first and foremost, hello to my very good longtime friend, Walter Rice. We go
Pleasure.
way back to when I think neither of us had any gray hair, so those were the good old days, I suppose. But good to see you in this forum, Walter. You look good.
You too. You too.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So why am I where I'm at today? Is that your question? Or how did I get to
Yeah.
this point?
Yeah. Well, what, tell me about the canoe that brought you in.
Sure, of course. So, I have always had a very strong commitment to public service. And as you know, when I started my career as an attorney, I was a union side labor attorney, working in-house representing public sector employees over a 4-state region. Went into private practice for a couple of years, continuing to do municipal law work. And then at some point was given the opportunity to serve on a full-time basis in a neighboring community where I served as city solicitor, doing all sorts of great things in that community, whether it be labor negotiations, development opportunities in the community, every aspect of municipal government. And Rose,
Now, if I may,
go ahead.
we're talking about Melrose, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, in the interest of full disclosure here, so people understand our relationship, I served as the interim veteran service officer for the city of Melrose as well when you were serving there. So,
Correct.
and the nature of the questions that I bring up and what you say here, I've had a front row seat and been able to observe you in action and your capabilities and qualifications to do a very difficult job. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to get that out there.
No worries.
All right, so you're in City of Melrose, and
in City of Melrose was blessed for for a time to be designated as the deputy mayor and city solicitor, where I was really involved in all aspects of municipal government, which I love. And ultimately in 2021, I left Melrose. Went back to the labor movement, where I currently serve as the general counsel for a union side practice covering a 4-state region. We've got public sector and private sector employees. And just to kind of come full circle on this, what got me back into politics, because as you know, I was in office for a number of years, about 10 years ago. What got me back into Everett politics was really two things. Number one, what I saw was a dire need for experienced representation on. At the time, there was a real drive to get back into public service, as well as to bring an experienced voice to the city council. And so in 2023, I decided to re-engage, to get back on the city council and to serve. And I have enjoyed every minute being back on the city council.
I'm not a resident anymore, but I couldn't be happier to see your return.
Thank you.
It definitely rose to the level of General MacArthur came back and came walking in. So I can understand the attraction, and just once you get into that, I mean, it's almost I hate to say addictive, but a little bit of it is. It gets under your skin a little bit, and somebody like you knows you can affect change. You have the communication skills, and you have the experience and the ability kind of deliver and reach across the aisle in the proverbial sense, and talk to the people you have to talk to and get a consensus, to move your body forward. So when you were contemplating this and you're going to come back and you're going to be a counselor, like you were before, an alderman, was part of the motivation what you were seeing at the time in city government? Did you say this thing is things have really gotten chaotic, things have really strayed off the mission, and that's part of the reason you wanted to come back in? Or was it not so much the critical opinion that you had, it was just the desire to be back in the mix? So again, do you come in with the mindset of there needs to be a better form of government? I mean, you have that general feeling?
Well, when I came back, one of the, I mentioned the two drivers earlier, but sort of it's kind of an ancillary reason was, not ancillary, quite frankly, this is primary, was
Yeah.
the fact that we have experienced such division in our community for the past several
Right.
years. And in
Right.
my view, there was a dire need, number one, to bring some grown-ups into the room to address those divisions and to heal those divisions. And then equally important was a need to bring a functional city government forward, because I've also seen, on top of the division, growing dysfunction in how city
Correct.
government operates. And
Correct.
so my hope was, and as you know, the first year I was elected to that first term, which is the current term, my colleagues bestowed on me the honor to make me president of the city council, which was
Yes.
not a title I was striving for, which was not a role I was looking for. But at the time, I think there were members of the council who felt I would be a great fit to try to stabilize what was, at that point, somewhat of an unstable situation.
And from the cheap seats, the council was correct in that, because it worked. It worked. The whole demeanor and the whole tone and just the general cooperative effort of the council itself took a shift for the better once you got into the seat. I mean,
thank you for those kind words.
It's not a case of having to be heavy-handed or anything like that. It's just a case of knowing how to channel that information, just as you did last night when we had the conversation, going back and forth when Miss Devaney was up there, and there was a lot of banter back and forth about this being wrong and that being wrong and this and that, and you immediately grabbed the reins and you tried to restore some sanity to that situation, because it was counterproductive to what you were trying to achieve there. But what I'm getting at is the language you use, the diplomacy you use, has been sorely lacking in the past. People just don't have the depth and professionalism to sit in and oversee this as you do, because you do have the roots, you do have the experience for this. And as I said in my monologue introducing you, the pink elephant and the $1 million question when it comes to the capabilities and qualifications of Rob Van Campen, and everybody wants to know, and I'm going to ask you, and I'm not going to pressure you to give me a definitive answer if you can't, but if you can, please. And I will say publicly, if you're not ready to commit one way or the other with an answer on the question, and you know what the question's going to be, that you consider Everett Reinvented as being your platform to make an announcement, should be in the positive or the negative. So, of course, the question we're asking, is Rob going to run for mayor? Have you made a decision on this?
So, I first of all, let me say,
okay.
Yeah, I'm flattered that the community, residents in the community, stakeholders in the community, stakeholder groups in the community have asked this question of me. Are you a candidate for mayor? Are you going to run for mayor? And I want to say, this might be a long answer to your question, but I feel the need to share this. When I decided to run for city council in 2023, I had no intention of ever running for mayor again. Zero intention of ever running for mayor again. I had done it prior unsuccessfully and had really no intention. My intention was to bring good public service back to, at a minimum, to the city council. Mm-hmm. In fact, I shared that sentiment with the current mayor, that I had no intention of seeking the office of mayor. My intention was to be an experienced voice on the city council. Well, I will say, while that continues to be my intention, the ground is shifting beneath my feet and the feet of everyone in the city of Everett these days, particularly
and by the minute it shifts.
Correct, by the minute, particularly with what's happening with respect to the Inspector General's report that recently came out, and the issues that rose to the surface as a result of that. And now the city councils need to really take on a responsible, grown-up role to address those issues. And I have to say, for your viewers, some of whom I hope are my colleagues on the city council is absolutely doing its job right now with respect to this matter, because we are duty bound to the people of Everett to make sure those recommendations are properly and fully and fairly implemented.
Correct.
But let me finish the answer here, Walter, before you go to your next question. So the answer to your question is today.
Unfreeze, Rob.
Today, am I still frozen?
Yeah.
I don't know why that's happening.
It's my. I
have a good Wi-Fi connection here too.
Do you have is it low light? Do you have a low light situation?
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes if it's dark, there you are. You're back again.
All right.
Sometimes when it's dark, the tracking software can't continue to function.
Yeah, sure. So, just to put a finer point on the answer to your question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is obviously something now that has been thrust in my direction, and I have to give it serious consideration, which I am doing. My intention currently is to run for re-election as a member of the city council, but simultaneously, I am, so sometimes history and the man meet. I am considering how that confluence of forces that has befallen on me recently is going to play out. So I will hope to make some kind of a decision in that direction in the very near future.
All right.
And again, I want to say for the record, Walter, as you know, as my longtime friend, even the consideration of this type of a campaign was not on my radar when I got back into the role of a public servant in this community.
And there's a lot of reasons why that would be the case. A few of them, I don't think, having been a little bit close to a situation like this, having run a small campaign myself, having partaken in a few, I realize that the commitment that is involved, okay, and the cost that's involved. And I don't, when people ask you this question and they get a little bit uneasy because you don't have an immediate answer, I don't think they're really grasping the depth of the decision you have to make and who and what it involves. I mean, you're a person with a family. I know your wife. I remember her from the fundraisers and things like that. Met her, a lovely woman, two fine children. And your decision one way or the other impacts their future. So they're not only going to run and campaign with you, they are now subjected to the public spotlight, and they don't have really personal lives in that sense anymore either. So they're having to commit to this just as much as you. Now, there are some people that might be headstrong and say, well, I don't give a darn what the family thinks. This is my future, and so on, and do it. But then you're gonna have problems in the personal side of things, and that's going to impact the ability to serve the people. So you have to be looking at what is the gravity or the gravitas of making this decision as it applies to the family. What is it going to do? The financial obligation is staggering. People, I don't think, understand that. You think you're throwing out a couple $100 on signs and 1x4s to hold them up, and then standing on the street corner. And I know way back when I got involved in the campaigns, back when Ragucci was still mayor, John Hanlon was running, and things like that. A mayoral campaign at that time was costing $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Right? And that was 15, 20 years ago. So I don't know. I'm only guessing that you have to be in for six figures when you're doing a serious mayoral campaign. And you take somebody like John Hanlon, who, God bless him, I love the man. I mean, he gave me an opportunity the turned out to be probably the pinnacle of my life, career-wise. But in any event, I know he took 3 cracks at it in going against David Rigucci. So if my figures are correct, I mean, he had to be in, again, this is 15, 20 years ago, 150 large. So somebody that's going to jump into the mayor's race, especially with the fundraising capabilities that the incumbent has right now, is going to need a lot of money. Yeah. Again, this is a family decision. You're going to be, you're going to have to rely on the fundraising, but you're going to have to rely on a lot of your own money, and people don't understand that. So they might think it's just a whimsical decision on your part to say, "Oh yeah, I'll run," or "Oh no, I won't." But in my opinion, a person has to be very, very, very careful and certain when they make a decision, and make the decision only once.
Correct.
Because if you haven't
Correct. And let me say this, Walter, because I think you probably want to move on to other topics, as do I at this point. But let me just say this. It is a heavy decision. There is great weight behind making that type of a decision. And in my case, it's a decision I didn't anticipate having to even entertain. I am now thrust to entertain that decision, which I am currently doing. I will only say whether it is me or any other candidate for mayor this year. Well, my hope is that person, again, whether it is me or any other candidate, is running to end the divisiveness in the community, is running to bring what I would call an experienced, professional, functioning government to City Hall, one that we can be proud of, and one that we can look to the future with great hope in working together on.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I know it's in some sense it's personal. To ask this kind of information, but it's a public concern. I appreciate you taking the time and the depth to share that. So yeah, we will move on to a couple other things where I can call on kind of your background and expertise as. I think you froze up again too. I'm not sure.
I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, but your image is frozen. So move around a little bit and see if it'll catch back up. In any event, yeah, you're in a tough position, and moving on to other matters. One thing that has concerned me, and this plays into what we're just talking about, is the process in which appointments are made. I was out after I was let go by City of Everett, the DeMaria administration back in 2008, whatever it was. I served out in Natick, and 6 months was their interim, and I was one of the finalists for the permanent position. And what the select board did was they basically did the interviews of the 3 finalists at a public meeting, televised, asked questions and all that, and then they voted up and down on who their chosen candidate was, and that's what the town went with. So it wasn't a hand-picked appointment by a mayor and a rubber stamp by a board and bang, bang, bang. Some of the board of selectmen in Natick, they even came out a day or two beforehand individually to my office to talk to me, to learn a little bit about me. They were really in depth. So I think a huge problem, and you used the word dysfunction, which is that's probably kind of the word I would use. But there is a great deal of dysfunction, and a lot of that came from people coming into positions for all the wrong reasons, coming into political appointments for all the wrong reasons, coming into political appointments unqualified to do that job. So my feeling is that the confirmation committee needs to be in place, run by the city council, and any of these nominees need to be approved, and they need to be vetted. They need to be vetted for their qualifications. But if it's just a who you know and who you shake hands with is going to be the qualifications, you're going to have the same dysfunction in there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point. One of the things I did right out of the gate when I had the pleasure, or the honor, I should say, of serving as council president in 2024 was to ensure that all appointments, whether, board appointments, department head appointments, that all appointments went to the Legislative Affairs and Elections Committee of the City Council, and that those appointees, at a minimum, were able to provide their resume or some documentation of their background for the appointment that they were seeking. And my view was, and continues to be, because that is the type of transparency that people demand in their government. They want to know if someone's being appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, which are critical roles in the community that have great regulatory power, that these folks have some level of expertise or some background in those areas. So that is spot on. We do have a system that today currently works, and the current president of the city council, Stephanie Martins, has continued that process for appointees to go to that committee. But no, you're spot on. I think people demand that, particularly in local government.
That's good. That's a step in the right direction, but it's still not in front of the public eye. And there just seems to be so much secrecy that has gone on over the years in the administration, and it just seems to grow by the day. We learn less and less and less about what the status of city government is on a daily basis. Case in point, of course, is the soccer stadium. All kinds of meetings were going on behind closed doors and things like that, and the residents were never cut in on it. So, well, yeah, it's great that at least the committee is looking at these people for qualifications. Again, I think it needs to be in front of the public eye. Let's make let's hold the system, not the individuals, but the system accountable to the choice they're going to make in putting these offices. You get into public safety and things like that. Thankfully, it looks like your public safety leaders, they're experienced people. They've been in the job. They know what they're doing. They weren't political appointments or favoritism appointments and things like that. But my worry is in other departments or in other areas, people have gotten into jobs where they're not qualified for, and it poses not just a sad state of affairs for the taxpayer not getting their money's worth, but it also poses a risk, to the individuals they're working with and around. So I think there's a very compelling reason to bring this as much into the public eye with a full-fledged, publicly displayed, confirmation hearing as they do, at the federal government level with the president's appointments.
I think one of the concerns too, one of the concerns, Walter, that I would add as well.
You're still frozen up, so see if you can shake that out.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. I mean, I got your frozen image, but you haven't been. It hasn't been a live image for about 5 minutes now. I'm just gonna run with it, and we'll just have to.
I can see myself. I could see myself moving on this camera. That's the oddity.
Okay, well, maybe in fact it's my image.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So, what I will just add to this conversation is one of the things that has been most concerning to me is the fact that the current administration has certain department heads who are serving in department head roles who have not come to the city council for an appointment. I have expressed concerns directly to the administration that there needs to be a process that has to be followed. The city charter requires that a process be followed, and it hasn't been strictly following that process. So that's concerning because, to your point, there are department heads, appointees of the mayor who work at City Hall, who do not have the confirmation of the city council, which is critical in our system of government.
Okay. Okay. And, interestingly enough, and I'm not asking you to name names, but I'm going to do it because that's my right as a private citizen. You mentioned human resources, and I don't know the man, but I think that's an example. Now, you had an individual. I've applied for human resource positions, and was even talking to one person who was a candidate way back when in a mayor's race in Everett, who was considering me for HR director. And when I looked at it, and I looked at really the certifications you need, and and the kind of education you should have, the paper you should have behind you, human resources training, the legal training, and all that, it is pretty in depth. It's like it's beyond getting real estate licenses and things like that. So there's a lot of there. You back again. So a lot of training involved, and a lot of paper needed. And what I've seen in the last couple of appointments on human resources, that doesn't seem to be the standard, for the current administration. And so the person coming into the position from the rec center now, I can't remember, I can't say his name properly, Pasqualilio, if that's correct. I don't know his background. All right. And I certainly have no issues with the guy. But in terms of what we're talking about here is, did he come with the qualifications? Now you're talking about somebody who's going to run human resources, has access to a grand deal of people's personal information, their life stories, their finances, and everything else. So to just arbitrarily pick somebody and put them into a position, and if in fact, and I don't know what it was, but as a thank you or a political favor or something like that, it is playing fast and loose with the city's money and the city's liability. Am I right?
Well, I think what I would say is that the individual serving as the human resources director currently was an exceptional director of youth development and enrichment for the city, and he did a great job in that role. But unfortunately, I think in this particular situation, you have a director who has extraordinarily limited experience as a human resources director. I always joke about people love to say, oh, so and so is the smartest guy in the room, whoever it is, but you wouldn't want the smartest guy in the room flying your airplane if he wasn't a pilot.
No, this is not a time, especially with the city, to be learning on the fly.
Correct.
As you have indicated, the city is in a precarious position right now, just in general, because of all the legal matters and all that. So you don't have the luxury of being able to give somebody the time to learn the ropes as they go. This is a hit the ground running position. Every position in the city of Everett right now is a hit the ground running position. And so to come in without some prior experience and the proper qualifications, the proper certifications and all that behind you, again, I think that shows. I think it shows malfeasance. I think it shows great irresponsibility on behalf of the leadership that they allow this to happen. I don't know what leverage the city council can have in interfering in these decisions. I don't think they, at least by the charter and the code, you have much leverage.
No, the charter obviously gives the mayor a lot of authority to make these appointments. The only leverage the city council has is just to continue to demand greater transparency, greater accountability, greater communications with the city council, which currently are almost at an unfortunate standstill. But that is really the lever that the city council can pull. Greater accountability, greater transparency, so that the community and the people of Everett can understand who's getting these roles, can understand their qualifications and background, and can understand why they're the best for those roles.
Yeah. All right. Well, this it's a good segue into the second thing is, yeah, as far as I know, the council does not have an ethics committee, do they?
The council, I believe, does not have an ethics committee. You caught me off guard on that one, but I don't believe it does.
All right. Wouldn't you think one could be used, but it would only be effective if it was one that was proactive. If it's going to be, and let's face it, you and I have been in the political game for a long time. And a lot of times we know when something comes up, like a bill or something like that, that it might be turfed off into a committee because the people just want to see it die in a natural death while it's in there waiting to come back out. But so if there was an ethics committee, you would have to have some teeth. It would have to have standards, and it would have to, insist that the members of city government, abide by those standards. And if they don't, the all boys club is over. It's not, we're going to circle the wagons and we'll let you get away with the crap this time. I am so, and again, in disclosure here, you and I had a conversation earlier, and I told you that it just absolutely stuns me the attitude that the administration takes right now towards the members of the council or the council as a body in pointing the finger at you and saying how bad you all are, how dare you stand up for what's right, how dare you accuse me of wrongdoing even if it may be true, and how dare you expect us to live and abide by the law, as the residents expect. So it's like the abuser has turned into the victim as pointing the fingers. And I'm wondering, when I fell through the looking glass, when the world turned upside down, where the abusers become the victims now. So it just stuns me that they object in the way that they object, in the tone they use, the anger, the snide remarks. The mayor the other night there at that public meeting, well, hey, you're all trying to put me in jail when you were trying to talk to the man and ask a legitimate question. It's
Yeah.
you
So
have to
so
throw.
I think I make a great effort at compartmentalizing issues. The Inspector General
Yeah,
issue is one issue that is in front of us that has to be dealt with. The issue of the stadium is another issue that's in front of us that has to be dealt with. The city budget, which will soon be coming before us for consideration, is another issue. And then all the myriad of other issues that the city faces today, all the challenges, school overcrowding, overdevelopment, parking, traffic, pollution, all of those issues have to be compartmentalized because they all have to be addressed.
and I could, in that particular instance I'm talking about, I could see it. And in fact, I had an exchange with somebody on the Everett Reporter 2 Facebook page. They were mentioning, how he said that, and I said, watch Rob. I said he is a calculated individual, and what I was watching was your hand. You went like this, and when he overtalked you, your hand moved, and I could see that mentally you had already started setting up what your response was going to be. You were just going to wait for him to run out of air, and you already had it all set up. And that's what told me, in no uncertain terms, I said the man is thinking ahead of the curve here. He's
Yeah, well,
not going to be outside.
because honestly, the issue of the stadium is so important that
Well, it is.
there's no reason to inject other irrelevant issues into that particular issue when you're discussing it.
Absolutely. And it could be the make or break scenario of really what turns Everett into a complete ghetto versus will it survive all this transformation that's underway right now. And, it's going to be a whole new thing. It's one of the first observations I made about Everett when I moved there in 1990, it kind of struck me that it was a village or a town within the city. It You had such a multi-generational feel to it. You could walk down just about any street in there, and you could find a three-decker house, and the grandparents were on the first floor, and the kids were on the third floor, and the grandkids were on the second, things like that. So it was the pride of the homeowner that they kind of sustained the communities. Not just the homeowner, but the residential homeowner that lived in Everett and had to endure this. And then when people started selling and moving out, or just moving out and renting out, things like that, the concern for the neighborhood went down. But the same motivation is not there that it was 20 years ago. So this whole city is now transformed into a whole different animal, as I see it. And the vested interest that people should feel or did feel in the past, that's not there now, is going to have to be rejuvenated with the newcomers. Which brings me to the questions of, with all the building that's gone on, there is an influx of new people coming into the city. These are new votes. Now, I'll bet dollars to donuts. The rental agents in these high rises were selling them a bill of goods. Oh man, you're gonna, you'll wake up in the morning, you'll go to the rooftop pool, do your swim, jump in the 109 bus, and you're gonna be in work 30 minutes. And then they move in and they find themselves sitting on the parkway for 9 hours. A day in the commute, things like that. So they've been sold a bill of goods, and these people need contact. They're out in the wilderness right now. So, have you, as an individual, did you hear from any newcomers into the city? Is your office being contacted? Are you aware of city services being contacted? Are they starting to respond and ask questions about what's going on with their city government now that they're a new resident?
Yeah, I think, I think, as you know, the city of Everett was a neighborhood of families. That was the city of Everett, a blue-collar, hardworking, proud community where families lived, worked, and played to give themselves, their children, future generations a better life. And we have seen over the last 20 or so years this regentrification of the city of Everett, where a lot of those families, Walter, have left and have been replaced by a very multicultural, diverse population. And I say that as a positive because it is not a bad thing. It's how my ancestors got here, and it's how your ancestors got here. But I will say one of the challenges that I have seen over the last 5 or 10 years, and particularly so since I've been back into public office, is engagement is a difficult thing to achieve, particularly with folks living in larger developments now, like down on Route 16, larger housing developments, is causing a sort of a disconnect between city government and the people who live there.
That goes to kind of the point I want to get at is when I say vested interest, people had a vested interest because they were going to be in Everett all their life. And I think even these people that are laying out some heavy money for a rental unit, they don't, probably most of them, their design is they're not going to be there forever. This is not a life decision they've made, to purchase the condo or rent the apartment out there or never. This is a transitional point for them. So they're not going to have the same concern or the same interest in seeing a clean city.
But at the end of the day, they should want to. The role of City Hall should be to engage those folks, to give them a vested interest in the community, to get them buying houses in neighborhoods if they want to have families, to give them the type of quality of life that they're willing to pay for in a community like Everett, close to Boston. That should be the role of City Hall.
Absolutely. So I guess you've kind of already answered the question I was going to ask after this was, how do you get that engagement? You know, the problem is we don't know what we don't know. And, first the people have to be, the outreach has to be conducted, and they have to know, what the expectations they should have with city government, how they should be able to deal with any of the issues and things like that. And as you are saying, that's really not happening right now. So, people, I would assume, are just saying, okay, it is what it is, and we're not going to change anything. And so, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get these people engaged? How do you make them interested? In my opinion, it's education. You need to
Yep.
really
So
translate for them what's going on with their money. They're paying exorbitant amounts in rent. Why? A lot of that because the landlords have to pay exorbitant taxes.
so
City services.
one of the ways you do that, and this is a real life example to share with you and your viewers. When I was city council president, I worked with my friends at La Comunidad, and we
Right.
brought Spanish language interpretive services to the city council meetings. Those services continue to this day. Now, the demand is not where I would like it to be, Walter, in terms of participation to utilize those services, but we continue to provide those services. So, to the extent our Spanish communities want to engage at City Hall, want to participate in city council meetings, want to observe the deliberations, that option is available to them. But to your point, it is a question of raising awareness, raising education, making people aware of the types of services that are available to get them more engaged, more and more engaged in the community. And as you know, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but the more engaged the citizenry is, the stronger and more effective the government will be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't poop where we eat. And, if people start caring, and feel that they have some empowerment, they're going to treat their own individual conduct is going to raise the bar a little bit, and they're going to have the same expectations of others as well. Right
Correct.
now, people just they turn their head to some of the craziness that goes on because they figure, hey, they can't change it, and hey, the
Yep.
city's not going to do nothing about it.
Yep. Yeah, and I
But
do think to that point, I think a lot of when I talked about the divisiveness earlier and the dysfunction, I think a lot of that is a turnoff for average residents who want to get engaged otherwise. I think a lot of it is a turnoff, and that's why we also
sure,
have to deal
sure.
with that issue.
Come on, Ron. How many times have you heard people say, "I'm not getting in. I'm not getting into this political game"? It's bullshit, and all it is backbiting and da 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 da. Or I'm not volunteering for this. I'm not doing that because same reasons. As you've so eloquently identified, the divisiveness. I don't. You can put all the great systems and policies and practices and plans and programs into place, but if you have that main divide like you do that exists right now, nothing's going to work. It needs the cooperative effort across the boards, and you can't do that with half a force. As I see it. Um,
I don't disagree with that. I don't
so
disagree with that.
say it again.
I said I don't disagree with that. One of the other sort of cornerstones of my drive to get into office was greater communication, and the mayor himself can testify to this. That when I took office, when I became president, I had suggested greater communication between the city council and the executive branch. That was,
I
in my
recall.
view, critical to making sure that our government worked properly.
I recall, and I think you re-emphasized that very conversation sometime more recently in the last month or so, pointing it out that you did, I don't even want to call it an olive branch because there wasn't a divide. You hadn't been in government for a while up to that point, but you came in, in a benevolent manner. But I think you referenced this about a month ago and pointed out either to the mayor or Sal or somebody that you were responding to. Yeah, that's exactly how you came into the situation, because let's face it, I mean, you're as instinctive as anybody, and anybody that's savvy knows you can come in. You could have come in there with a box of candy and a dozen roses and promised Carlo the moon. He's never going to be receptive to you being in city government. You are always a threat to him. You are always the footsteps that he is hearing. And he knows that they're getting closer every minute. So he has no desire to see you prosper, or see you, thrive, even at the level of
Walter,
council.
I do just want to make sure we clarify that again, as I said earlier, my intention in coming back to city government was never to be the mayor's shadow or to be on his tail or to even seek the office. My intention was to bring greater communication, collaboration, all of that back to city government because I didn't see it.
I'm not saying that, Rob. I'm saying you're the monster under the bed. Okay, you are the monster under the bed, and you're always going to be the monster under the bed.
I don't know how I feel about that comment, Walter.
Well, the analogy here is, trying to tell a little kid there is no monster under the bed. So you can try to convince the Dean Marie administration.
I'm like the soft, cuddly monster under the bed, though.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
You have no designs or anything like that. And if you could convincingly get that point across, he's not going to sleep well at night because the echo is always there. You have the potential, and the potential is what is the threat, not your actions. It's your potential that is a threat. And when you take somebody that is a what's a good word, a hollow suit, right, has no substance to them, and knows that they're surviving on optics alone and not substance, that threat is constant because it's a self-assurance thing. He knows that he's propped up, and the only reason that he's gotten as far as he is because of the manipulators that he's put around him have been effective enough to get him this far down the road. But he knows he's not the real deal, and when somebody comes along, the comparative aspect of that makes it very more evident to the people. This guy's a hollow suit. This guy has the real deal. So as long as you're even standing in the same light, in the same room, you're a problem for him. You always will be a problem for him. So no matter how nice and how benevolent you are, you're never going to get him to receive you in a magnanimous manner. That's what I get to say.
I'm going to take everything you've just said as a total compliment, and I appreciate that.
Well, all right. I appreciate your time. We've gone on a little bit. We've covered a few things. I don't want to get into the down and dirty too much on what's going on with the questions over the longevity payments and things like that, because it's still active, and you're obligated to certain confidentiality as you work in executive sessions, as you work with attorneys, as you work with legal matters in general. And again, you talk about singing to the choir. I'm telling a lawyer this, but I think that needs to be respected, and so I don't want to dwell too heavily on what the plans might be of the council. That said, the impression I'm getting from the administration's responses and the way they're characterizing everything is that they basically have no intentions of ever accepting responsibility for the situation, of following the recommendations of the IG and the requests or demands of the council for restitution and changing the structure of city government. I don't think they have any intentions of doing any of that stuff, and they're adamant about it. So, if I'm correct, the next course of action could be that this falls back to the ethics committee, and I don't know this to be true, and I don't know if you have this information as well. But my understanding is, if the ethics committee determines that there was, in fact, some criminal activity, some more significant liability in the civil realm, that they can go ahead and refer to the Attorney General's office. So taking the onus away from the council and assuming that there is still some action with state government in reviewing this matter, am I correct? Does the potential exist? Does the State Ethics Committee have that kind of avenue with the Attorney General's office to refer for charges?
Well, all I will say is what happened with this longevity issue is a real stain on the community, because it just brings a negative light on a city that should be so proud of itself. And, the city council's doing its job. We are implementing the recommendations of the Inspector General. The findings in the Inspector General's report speak for themselves. I mean, anyone can read that letter from February 27th and understand what was found. And those findings, as you know, Walter, are based on public records, on the city's payroll records, on the city's budget and finance records keeping system. These weren't fabricated. These records weren't fabricated. Advance payments made before an ordinance was even enacted, which is one of the findings in the Inspector General's report. That says
a lot, doesn't it?
That is just unfortunately a reality. So what I will say is, because I don't want to get too into this, the process has to play itself out. One of the recommendations of the Inspector General was to refer the issue of longevity payments to the State Ethics Commission, and the City Council is taking seriously its obligations to implement that recommendation.
Well, I guess, what I'm trying to get across here, at least for people who will listen to this, is that the council has done what it can do. Its power is very limited to do anything about this, but from what I can tell, the community, even I hate to use the word loyalists, but the De Maria loyalists, even most of them, they understand that this needs to be addressed. All right, this is not a witch hunt. This is not heavy-handedness of the city council. This is what you have to do. You're front and center in front of the general public as much as the mayor is. They have expectations of this council. The council needs to facilitate and move on the recommendations of the IG. You really don't have a choice in that matter. Otherwise, you become part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Correct.
Yeah, so you have to do this. And, it's just outrageous. They turn around and point fingers and accuse you of being heavy-handed, not you individually, but the council. Heavy-handed and mean and, you're doing all kinds of bad things. I mean, Jesus. I don't know. I just don't know. It just amazes me. It takes gall. It takes absolute gall to turn around and play victim in a case like this. And again,
on the Inspector General's report, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but the City Council is a steward of the community. It is a steward of the financial position of the community. We're duty bound to implement these recommendations. And you're interviewing with someone this evening who left office in January of 2014 and spent the next almost 10 years as a private citizen. Not once, in my estimation, did I level any criticism against the mayor.
All right.
And so this is not a witch hunt. This is not
No,
a
not at all.
predetermined result. This was something that is landing in the city at this point in time, following a multi-year investigation by an independent state agency.
Right.
And we're duty bound to implement its recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, am I wrong here? I mean, the audacity. I think a lot of people feel the same way I do. It's just audacity. I mean, it is unmitigated gall to take, such an accusatory stance by the person who did the wrong.
Yeah.
And then sending emissaries, and that's exactly what I'll call it, emissaries, into the city council with the same tone, the same sarcastic tone, and I'm so offended that you accuse, the chief executive of the city of this. You're doing what you have to do, and
I will say, Walter, I have great faith in the people, and they will decipher what is right and what is wrong ultimately.
All right, let's spell out a couple of things, and then I'll let you go. We'll spell out a couple of things for the people, because I know you have these numbers in the back of your head. What do we got in Everett? About 20,000 registered voters?
About 22,000 currently.
All right. Now, if my numbers are correct and my memory's correct, and it might be a little sketchy at my young, tender age, you get about a 10% turnout in the mayoral races. So you get 2,000 to 3,000 votes total across the board.
I think the last mayoral election in 2021, I believe there were approximately 7,000 who came out to vote.
7,000, really?
Yeah, and let me point out on this too that typically in any race there are blanks. People just don't vote for either candidate. Typically they do that because they've not been engaged by the candidate. They don't know the candidates, whatever the factor causing them to blank that race is. In 2021, if you look at the data from the city of Everett, of the 7,000 roughly who voted in that election citywide, there were like 35 blanks in that race across the entire city.
Only 35.
That is an incredibly low number if you think about 7,000 voters going and voting. That tells you how committed those voters were to their candidate.
And as seemed to mirror the same thing that happened with Hanlon and Ragucci, each the lead that DeMaria has won by has diminished each time over the last several years. And now in the last time it's down to 200 votes. And that's kind of where I was going with this analogy of numbers, is that if you, and I'll revise, so you get about 30% of the registered voters in the field coming out. But at the end of the day, if the margin was only 200 and the trend continues in that direction, it looks like the favorability or the support that the mayor enjoyed in the past is diminishing, which is interesting. And that goes back over to why I was asking about the newcomers, how we reach the newcomers and things like that, because those are the new votes coming in. And just traditionally, and again, you know this better than I do, in a situation like this, the new voters coming in, it's not going to go for the incumbent. All right. The newcomers are going to favor the challenger in a case like this. So he'd lose even more ground by the outreach to the new voters or the grab on the new voters. What I want to see is the pursuit, because the city is so multicultural, but now you have leaders that are part of those subsections, subsects. They can reach out to the community and motivate. You talk about La Comunidad. I mean, they're probably the leader, and the ones that do this, they're reaching out. They're trying to get people that are limited English speakers and new to the area, new to the country, engaged in the system, and get citizenship and being able to vote and all that. But I want to see that happen in other areas. I want to see, you know, a couple of candidates emerged 2 years ago. They really seemed to have a lot of stretch in that direction. I can't remember his name. It was Kivan or something like that. I don't know whether he was Middle Eastern, Pakistani, but his campaigns, he was in a tuxedo. And this is a guy that seemed to be a businessman in the community. He's reaching out, to people that come from the same background as him and encouraging them to get in the mix. So it's through the attraction of the new votes, I think, is going to be the biggest deciding factor in terms of flipping the script here. I really think.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. We're not just talking about the mayor here, right? That's a challenge for the city council. That's a challenge for the school committee, as much as it is in the mayor's race. It's a challenge to engage and keep folks engaged and make sure they understand what's important to them and that they convey it and have the ability to engage with the potential candidates that information so that there's this sort of shared destiny in the city of Everett.
It's just, I don't think people realize that only 20% of I'll call it 20%, we'll go middle of the road between my 10 and the 30, the numbers from that last election. But let's say that 20% of voters are going to be the turnout. So, I think you said, what did you say, seven, how many thousand?
I'm doing the quick math here.
22,000 in the city?
It comes, 22,000 registered voters. And if you had, again, last mayor's race, you had about 7,000. Your turnout's pretty, for a mayor's year, you're at 32, 33% turnout. Not great, but not abysmal.
Let's round up the numbers for crunching. But realistically, I say you're a city of over 70,000 people now with all the new additions and things like that. Census, I think, was calling it 48,000. But even when I was living there, it was upwards of 60,000. So it's going to be over 70,000 now. Taking that number and considering the number of registered voters, so let's reduce it to 25. So now you got 45,000 people in the city that are not voting and are not registered to vote. You get 25,000 now, and only 20% of them are coming out. So 20% of the registered voters are the kingmakers. They're the ones that are making the decision for the other 80% of the people in the community. All right, and that's how a person with low favorability winds up in office there. All they need to do is call on that little sect, the sect that's going to cast the votes. And we know how that was done and how it has been done traditionally over the years is by promising and trading city jobs and favors and things like that. So you get the family vote and in it comes. But people don't stop to realize that it is a small percentage that are playing kingmaker and making the decision on how the other 80% of the people in that community are going to live. And if they just get off their ass, get to the ballot box, and cast the vote based on their conscience, the problem's going to be solved.
Yeah, I think the problem, Walter, is voter apathy is so prevalent at every level. Right? State government, national, federal, U.S. government. It's so prevalent. And the real trick for all of us who want to see more engagement and more participation in the electoral process is how to do it and how to make it stick. Not so much for this sort of one-off election where you've got, I'll use national politics just as a small example here, but you've got an Obama candidate who was able to drive people to the polls as a candidate for president. And on the flip of the same coin, you've got a Trump candidate who was able to to really draw people out for his candidacy. But those are sort of the unicorns of politics. It is extremely hard to get voters and citizens and residents engaged in the system. And that's the real challenge here. That's why a show like yours, that's why folks that are willing to put themselves out there is so critical, because people who you and I may have 10 viewers for all we know. We could have 1,000 viewers, whatever it is. At least if we've touched a small group, maybe that little spark can become something greater over time.
Well, it's 8:30 Eastern time, and I'm going to have to put my Dr. Denton's and my bunny slippers on pretty soon because I am old. But
we've got the Celtics game here tonight, too. Don't forget the Celtics.
God bless you. Oh. I miss my Boston sports, and I really miss the restaurants. I just can't get good seafood. But another story for another day. So, in closing, Bob, you're it. People want you in office, and you are a good person, a good man, and eminently qualified, and probably the best hope for the city right now. And even though it was a little bit of joking, there's a little bit of seriousness in every joke. If there are any religious voters in Everett, and they get down on their knees each night to say their nightly prayers, I'm hearing that your name is running a close second to Jesus Christ right now.
I think that might be an exaggeration on your part, but I will say this. I am happy to be in the role I'm in right now and serving in even a small capacity right now.
Well, I need you to keep mulling it over, and I need you to get to that place in your head where it's the number one, not the only decision you can make, but it's the right decision to make, and that you pull the pin on this, because I think the best hope and the best future ever is sitting right in front of me in this image right now in Robert Van Campen. I don't think there's anybody else that exists within the city or that has enough knowledge and application here that can measure up. All right. So I know it's a lot of burden to place on you. I mean, sure, it's not everybody is flattered. Oh, hey, they want me to run, but it's also a hell of a level of responsibility, and we're coming full circle to what we talked about before. And I hope you make that decision, in the affirmative. I hope you use this platform to do your announcement. I'll even punch it all up, and we'll get people to tune in. Give the little guy a little hope here, and reach out to the small media provider like me. And then whoever the new mayor is, you can write me a letter of reference, tell them I need to run ECTV because I don't like their communication systems very much.
Let me say I appreciate your kind words, and thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Going to sign off, Rob. I'm going to hope that this thing uploads properly and I get all of your image. If not, what I'm going to have to do is just run this, your image as an audio, and I'll put your photograph up there. And but you got to make this decision, pull the pin, run from there, because don't make me break out my draft Van Campen poster.
I know. There you go. If you have, Walter, if you have issues with the tech, we can do it again too. So happy to do that.
Okay. Hey, I'll sign off. God bless you, sir. God bless you.
Talk to you later on, brother.
Love you. And
Good seeing you as well.
Get you in. All right. Take care, bud.
Take care, brother.
Bye.